This is, in fact, very exciting times for each and every one of us. And it doesn't make a difference whether you're Democrat or Republican. We're all Californians first and foremost. With that, it is a deep honor for me to have an opportunity to introduce a very special individual, a very special woman. She is our First Lady, and she's also not just the First Lady, but she is a special counsel. She is special counsel to our governor of the state of California. It is indeed an honor and pleasure for me to introduce our First Lady and our special counsel to the state of California, the Honorable Ann Gus Brown.
I think this is okay. Thank you. Thank you all so much. Well, how to introduce Jerry Brown? He's obviously someone known to all of you, and he's been in the public eye for over 40 years, maybe even longer than that. I'm sure you can correct me on that. But so I guess I can only say, what does he mean to me? And when I first met Jerry Brown, the thing that struck me immediately was his mind. Oh my God, this mind that runs at 100 miles per hour. It is restless, it's seeking, it's probing, it's creative. And frankly, for all of us who work with him, it's exhausting. But it is so stimulating, that mind of his. And I'm sure that most of you have already experienced this from Jerry, because if you're around him even for a few moments, this is something you can't fail to see. But what many of you may not know as well is his heart and his soul, which I've come to know so well over these years. And that, I would say, is very firmly grounded in tradition and principle and in the past. I think that Jerry, more than anyone, looks to the past for guidance, to his ancestors. He's one who keeps close friends from elementary school, from high school, from law school. He loves to keep those connections. Many of those people are here today. And as many of us know, he, over the past year or two, has been really probing his ancestry, from his great-grandfather, August Schuckman, who came here in the 1800s, and he really looks to all of that for guidance and for principles. And I think that's in many ways why he entered the seminary at the young age of 18, because for him that was a place that was a perfect combination where he could pursue sort of his eternal quest for knowledge, and yet do so in an environment where it was embedded in all of the eternal verities. And I think that was perfect for him. I think these characteristics, having them both in one man, makes him, frankly, a perfect husband for me, because his mind makes him endlessly interesting, and yet his heart makes him utterly devoted and committed. And it's just been terrific being with you. But more importantly, I think, even for California, is that especially in this time and place, this combination makes him a perfect governor, because he's someone that we know will enthusiastically and creatively forge a new and bold future for us. And yet, he will do so grounded enough in wisdom of the past that we won't drive off a cliff. And I think that's what we will need, especially in the next 4 years. So with that, I would like to call up both the Chief Justice and my husband, our governor.
I'm already up.
You're up, you are. We get over closer. to take the oath of office. And I would say, again, in a little bit of tradition, he's going to take the oath on a Bible that it's more in the Gust family tradition. Most of this stuff is about Brown these days, but we do a little Gust stuff every so often. And this Bible is a Bible that we got married with. You were inaugurated as Attorney General. You were inaugurated the last time as governor, and now this time. And I just want to read it, because this is a Bible that was given to my parents from my grandfather on Christmas of 1951. And in it he said to Anne, my mother's name was Anne, and Rock, my father's name is Rock, I am very happy to present to you for your home the Word of God. The eternal foundations are not found in property nor in power. Man looks to the hills for strength. The St. James Version not only is a source of strength and comfort, it is English literature at its best. I hope it becomes worn with use. It will then exist in your hearts. Affectionately, Father. And I can't say for sure whether my parents wore it out with use, but we are doing so on their behalf today. So, welcome up. Thank you. Are we coming here? Right.
Okay.
Where are you?
I understand. Right here.
Right here. Right here.
All right, here we go.
Are you good?
I'm good. We're all set for the fourth unprecedented term in California. No pressure. I, state your name,
I, Jerry Brown,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith
that I will bear true faith
and allegiance
to
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
upon which I'm about to enter.
upon which I'm about to enter.
Thank you for your leadership,
Thank you.
Governor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a good job.
Thank you, Mike. You do a good job. Thank you. That's good.
Thank you. Members of the legislature, the judiciary, constitutional officers, the extended family of my pioneering ancestors, and fellow Californians. I want to point out, by the way, there's a lot of these descendants. And I want all the descendants of August Schuckman and Cuneo and Roach all came in the 1850s. Just stand up and let everyone know how massive we are. And also, I don't know if you've been introduced, but the second newest justice, Tino Cuellar. Would you stand up, Tino? And the last new justice, Leandra Kruger. Will you? An inauguration is always a special occasion, but today it's particularly special as I think about that day 40 years ago when my father and my mother watched me take the oath of office as California's 34th governor. It's also special because how far we've come in the last 4 years. Then the state was deep in debt, $26 billion, and our unemployment rate was 12.1%. Now the state budget after a decade of turbulence, is finally balanced. More precariously than I would like, but balanced. California has seen more than 1.3 million jobs created in just 4 years, and the unemployment rate has dropped to 7.2. Thanks goes to the legislature for cutting spending, the economy for recovering, and the people for voting temporary taxes. We also have to thank the people for Propositions 1 and 2, save water and save money, and prepare us for an uncertain future. These are measures that nearly every Democrat and Republican voted to put on the ballot, and nearly 70% of voters ultimately approved. I'm proud to report, as a result, by the end of the year, we'll be investing in long overdue water projects and saving $2.8 billion in the state's new protected rainy day fund. And we're not stopping there. Soon we'll make the last payment of the $15 billion of borrowing made to cover budget deficits dating back to 2002. We'll also repay $1 billion borrowed from our schools and community colleges, and another $533 million owed to local governments. California has made bold commitments to sustain our environment, help the neediest, and build for the future. We are leaders in renewable energy and efficiency. We've extended health care to millions. We're transforming our educational and criminal justice systems. We're building the nation's only high-speed rail system. And we're confronting the drought and longer-term water issues. And last but not least, we've enacted real protections for our hardworking immigrants, including the issuance of long-awaited driver's licenses. In 2011, we're handed a mess, and through solid, steady work, we turned it around. While we've not reached the promised land, we have much to be proud of. As I embark upon this unprecedented fourth term as governor, my thought turns to a time long ago when I first entered this chamber, January 5th, 1959. It was for my father's inauguration. I sat right there in front of the rostrum next to my 81-year-old grandmother, Ida Shuckman Brown, feeling rather awkward in my priestly black suit and Roman collar. My perspective was different then. The previous August, as a young Jesuit living in what was then a pre-Vatican II seminary, I'd taken vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. To me, the boisterous crowd, the applause, the worldliness of it all was jarring. That was 56 years ago. I've learned to like it since then, by the way. Yet the issues my father raised at his inauguration bear eerie resemblance to those we still grapple with today. Discrimination, the quality of education, the challenge of recruiting and training teachers, the menace of air pollution and its danger to our health, a realistic water program, economic development, consumer protection, and overcrowded prisons. So you see, these problems, they never completely go away. They remain to challenge and elicit the best from us. To that end, over the next 4 years and beyond, we must dedicate ourselves to making what we've done work, to seeing that the massive changes in education, healthcare, and public safety are actually carried out and endure. The financial promises we've already made must be confronted honestly so they are properly funded. The health of our state depends on it. Educating the next generation is fundamental to our collective well-being. An issue that has plagued our schools for decades is the enormous barrier facing children from low-income families. When my father was governor, he sought to remedy the wide inequities among different school districts by calling for equalization of funding. His efforts were not successful. Now, decades later, we have finally created a much fairer system of school funding called the Local Control Funding Formula. Under the provisions of this law, state funds are directed to school districts based on the needs of their students. Districts will get significantly more funds based on the number of students from foster care, low-income families, and non-English speaking parents. This program also breaks with decades of increasing centralization by reducing state control in favor of local flexibility. Clear goals are set, and their enforcement is entrusted to parents and local officials. This puts California in the forefront of educational reform. After years of underfunding and even borrowing from our local schools, the state has now significantly increased its financial support for education. Next year, schools will receive $65.7 billion, a 39% increase in 4 years. The tasks ahead are daunting. Making sure that the new system of local control works, recruiting and training tens of thousands of teachers, mastering the Common Core curriculum, and fostering the creativity needed to inspire students. Teachers need to be held accountable, but never forget they have a tough job to do. They need our encouragement, not endless regulations and micromanagement from afar. With respect to education beyond high school, California is blessed with a rich and diverse system. Its many elements serve a vast diversity of talents and interests. While excellence is their business, affordability and timely completion is their imperative. And as I've said before, I'll not make the students of California the default financiers of our colleges and universities. To meet our goals, everyone has to do their part: the state, the students, and the professors. Each separate institution cannot be all things to all people, but the system in its breadth and diversity, through real cooperation among its segments, can well provide what Californians need and desire. Along with education, health and human services constitute a major part of what state government does. And in the past few years, we've made massive commitments in this area, which will require increasing levels of spending, the full extent of which is not yet known. For example, 2 years ago, California embraced the Affordable Care Act, dramatically increasing its health insurance coverage under the Medi-Cal program. The state will now enroll 12.2 million people during this budget year, a more than 50% increase. Providing the security of health coverage to so many Californians who need it is the right thing to do, but it isn't free. Although the federal government will temporarily foot much of the bill, new state costs now, and more so in the future, will run into the billions. Another major state responsibility is our system of crime and punishment. And here, too, I will refer to my father's 1959 address. He worried then about California's dangerously overcrowded prisons. He talked about identifying those prisoners who should never be released to prey again on an innocent public. But he also said we should also determine whether some prisoners are now kept confined after punishment has served its purpose. We face these same questions today. What purposes should punishment serve? And for how long should a person be confined to jail or prison? For a few days, a few years, or for life? In response to a large increase in crimes beginning in the 1970s, the legislature and the people, through ballot initiatives, dramatically lengthened sentences and added a host of new crimes and penalty assessments. Today, California's legal codes contain more than 5,000 separate criminal provisions and over 400 penalty enhancements, an arcane and complex mix that only the most exquisitely trained specialist can fathom. And funding has grown proportionally. During the 70s, we had 12 prisons holding fewer than 30,000 prisoners, and correction spending was only 3% of the budget. Our system then grew to a peak of 34 prisons with an inmate population of 173,000, eating up more than 10% of our budget dollars. 4 years ago, the United States Supreme Court held that our prisons were unconstitutionally overcrowded and imposed strict capacity limits far below the number of inmates that were then being held. Clearly, our system of crime and punishment had to be changed. And through the courts, the legislature, and the voters themselves, a number of far-reaching reforms have been enacted. The biggest reform is our realignment program, which places tens of thousands of lower-level offenders under county supervision. More recently, a federal three-judge panel ordered further measures to reduce prison overcrowding, and the voters, through Proposition 36 and Proposition 47, modified our criminal laws to reduce the scope of the three strikes law and change certain felonies into misdemeanors. All these changes attempt to find less expensive, more compassionate, and more effective ways to deal with crime. This is work that is as profoundly important as it is difficult. Yet, we must never cease on our efforts to assure liberty and justice for all. The task is complicated by our diversity and our divisions, and yes, by shocking disparities. Since time immemorial, humankind has known covetousness, envy, and violence. That's why public safety and respect for law are both fundamental to a free society. As we oversee these important changes to education, health care, and public safety, we must not lose sight of our long-term liabilities. We have to face honestly the enormous and ever-growing burden of the many commitments we've already made. Among these are the costs of pensions and retiree health care, the new obligations under the Affordable Care Act, the growing government costs of dealing with our aging population, bonded indebtedness, and the deferred maintenance on our roads and other infrastructure. These specific liabilities reach into the hundreds of billions of dollars. My plan has been to take them on one at a time. We've now taken steps to deal with the unfunded teachers' pensions and those of public employees. For the next effort, I intend to ask our state employees to help start pre-funding our retiree health obligations, which are rising rapidly. We must also deal with long-standing infrastructure changes. We're finally grappling with long-term sustainability of our water supply through the recently passed Proposition 1 and our California Water Action Plan. Equally important is having the roads, highways, and bridges in good enough shape to get people and commerce to where they need to go. It's estimated that our state has accumulated $59 billion in needed upkeep and maintenance. Each year, we fall further and further behind, and we must do something about it. So I'm calling on Republicans and Democrats alike to come together and tackle the challenge. We came together on water when many said it was impossible. We came together unanimously to create a solid rainy day fund. We can do it again and find a way to fund our under-maintained highways and roads. Finally, neither California nor indeed the world can ignore the growing assault on the very systems of nature on which human beings and other forms of life depend. Edward O. Wilson, one of the world's preeminent biologists and naturalists, offered this sobering thought. Surely, one moral precept we can agree on is to stop destroying our birthplace, the only home humanity will ever have. The evidence for climate warming, with industrial pollution as the principal cause, is now overwhelming. Also evident upon even casual inspection is the rapid disappearance of tropical forests and grasslands and other habitats where most of the diversity of life exists. With these global changes, he went on to say, we are needlessly turning the gold we have inherited from our forebears into straw, and for that we will be despised by our descendants. California has the most far-reaching environmental laws of any state and the most integrated policy to deal with climate change of any political jurisdiction in the Western Hemisphere. Under laws that you've enacted, we're on track to meet our 2020 goal of 1/3 of our electricity from renewable sources. We lead the nation in efficiency, cleaner cars, and energy storage. Recently, both the Secretary General of the United Nations and the President of the World Bank made clear that properly pricing carbon is a key strategy. California's cap-and-trade system, fashioned under AB 32, is doing just that and showing how the market itself can generate the innovations we need. Beyond this, California is forging agreements with other states and nations so that we do not stand alone in advancing these climate objectives. These efforts, impressive though they are not enough. The United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, backed up by the vast majority of the world's scientists, has set an ambitious goal of limiting warming to 2 degrees Celsius by the year 2050 through drastic reductions of greenhouse gases. If we have any chance at all of achieving that, California, as it has done in many areas, must show the way. We must demonstrate that reducing carbon is compatible with an abundant economy and human well-being. So far, we've been able to do that. In fact, we're well on our way to meeting our AB 32 goal of reducing carbon pollution and limiting the emission of heat-trapping gases to 431 million tons by 2020. But now it's time to establish our next set of objectives for 2030 and beyond. Toward that end, I propose 3 ambitious goals to be accomplished within the next 15 years. First, increase from 1/3 to 50% our electricity derived from renewable sources. 2, and even more difficult, reduce today's petroleum use in cars and trucks by up to 50%. 3, double the efficiency of existing buildings and make heating fuels cleaner. We must also reduce the relentless release of methane, black carbon, and other potent pollutants across industries. And we must manage farm and rangelands, forests and wetlands, so they can store carbon. All of this is a very tall order. It means that we continue to transform our electrical grid, our transportation system, and even our communities. I envision a wide range of initiatives: more distributed power, expanded rooftop solar, microgrids, an energy imbalance market, battery storage, the full integration of information technology and electrical distribution, and millions of electric and low-carbon vehicles. How we achieve these goals and at what pace will take great thought and imagination mixed with pragmatic caution. It will require enormous innovation, research, and investment, and will need active collaboration at every stage with our scientists, engineers, entrepreneurs, businesses, and officials at all levels. Taking significant amounts of carbon out of our economy without harming its vibrancy is exactly the sort of challenge at which California excels. This is exciting, it's bold, it's absolutely necessary if we are to have any chance of stopping potentially catastrophic changes to our climate system. California, since the beginning, has undertaken big tasks and entertained big ideas. Befitting a state of dreamers, builders, and immigrants, we have not hesitated to attempt what our detractors have called impossible or foolish. In the last 4 years, in the last 40 years, yes, ever since Gaspar de Portola in 1769 marched along the King's Highway, California has met adversity with faith and courage. We've had setbacks and failures, but always in the end, the indomitable spirit of California has triumphed. Through it all, through good times and bad, California has been blessed with a dynamism and historic trajectory that carries each generation forward. Whether these explorers came for gold or for God, came they did. The rest is history. The founding of the missions, the devastation of the native people, the discovery of gold, the coming of the 49ers, the Transcontinental Railroad, the founding of great universities, the planting and harvesting of our vast fields, oil production, movies, the aircraft industry, the first freeways, the State Water Project, aerospace, Silicon Valley, and endless new companies and Nobel Prize winners. This is California, and we are his sons and daughters. Yes, California feeds on change and great undertakings, but the path of wisdom counsels us to ground ourselves and nurture carefully all that we've started. We must build on rock, not sand, so that when the storms come, our house stands. We are at a crossroads, with big and important new programs now launched and the budget carefully balanced. The challenge is to build for the future, not steal from it, to live within our means and to keep California ever golden and creative, as our forebears have shown and as our descendants would expect. Thank you very much. Thank you.